Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is your 2022 Masters preview. It is the most magnificent sporting time of the year where we have Aintree, we have the Masters and some of the best football in the calendar. But this is your golf preview and I am your host George Elek, and today I'm joined by oddschecker's very own golf tipster Niall Lyons, and we're soon to be joined as well by golf performance analyst Duncan Carey as we look ahead to some of the most impressive golfers in what is the first major and some people's favourite major of the year at Augusta. We're going to go through Niall's tips that went out on the app and on site on Monday before looking at some of the market principles as well and some of the sub-markets too. But before we do that, we're going to speak to Duncan, who knows Augusta better than most and what it takes to win there. Yeah, Duncan, thank you very much for joining us today to preview the Masters. And I feel like the Masters more than any other tournament, because of course it's at Augusta every year and because everyone who watches it, even if they watch no other golf for the rest of the year, thinks they know Augusta so well. There are a lot of myths around what is needed to win at Augusta, what is important, what people should be looking for in terms of the profile of the player when looking for their selection. So having crunched the numbers and with all your experience as well working with players, what do you think are the most important things to look at when trying to find the winner of that green jacket?
Yeah, I think you're right in the first instance. I think this probably gathers more attention from casual golfers and people that aren't going to stay up and watch the final round of the Valero Texas will definitely be watching the full week of the Masters, and everyone knows the course. And I think that leads into what's important around Augusta is firstly sort of knowing the course, and the course experience is really important. I think that bears out that, you know, I think Sergio and Hideki in the last few years, it was their 10th or more time playing there, so experience definitely bears out. And also it's people say it's the easiest major to win. I'm not sure if I agree it's the easiest major to win, but it's definitely a smaller field because it's a field of about 90 players to start with, but also you've got previous winners in there who can play, some amateur players who are unlikely to do well. So in actual fact, you've probably got to beat 40 or 50 guys to win the green jacket. So it is really a shootout amongst the best current players in the world, I would say. But yeah, going into sort of what you need to do well around Augusta, some of the myths are right, and there are a few things that are definitely key. I think probably the most important thing is the approach play, really. Sort of 5 of the last 7 winners have finished in the top 5 in approach play, strokes gained for the week. And, you know, 9 of the last 10 winners have been in the top 7 of greens in regulation. So you need to be hitting your irons well. I think if you do everything else well and you don't hit your irons well, I think you'll probably struggle to do well around there. But you can probably get away with not being particularly long off the tee. And Augusta's fairly forgiving if you're not, you know, dead eye straight off the tee as well. So I think you can get away with being okay off the tee, but you have to play well with your irons. For sure. And then just broadly, all of the last sort of 6-7 winners have all played better than, you know, a PGA Tour average type week around the greens. And even the last 10 winners have all gone into Augusta being strokes gained positive around the greens in the 3 months leading up to the Masters. So you have to be good around the greens as well when you do miss the greens. And then obviously putting, you've got to hold putts. I mean, that's the same with every golf tournament. I think the putting is probably a bit overstated at Augusta. I think, of course, you need to putt well, but I think you can't win if you don't play well with your irons, is the simple fact.
And looking ahead at this weekend in particular, we're seeing some unsettled weather, it's fair to say, over Tuesday and Wednesday as well. We've seen the course playing very differently over the last couple of years, of course, with the November Masters back in 2020 as well. So how do you think the conditions are going to be looking like they're going to be over the course of this weekend, and what kind of player could that suit?
Yeah, so I think it's probably firm and dry at the moment, which would probably favour the better players, and I think that kind of negates the need to be a bomber off the tee. I think driving distance comes into a bit more into play when the course is softer. I think the scoring, I think Augusta is one of those courses, but when it's soft and a bit wet, I think it probably plays quite a bit easier, as was shown with Dustin Johnson in November when it was played out of sync there. He shot like 20 under par, which is a record, and I think you can take the pins on a bit more, which is always the key at Augusta. Where they put the pins, there's a lot of greens where you can't attack them, so you need to know where to hit it on the greens. the greens are softer and they do get some rain, I think it lends people that are good with their irons, it will be even more of an advantage because they can take those pins on. A bit of wind, look, it's relative, isn't it? The wind around there is not the wind you get at other courses and other times of the year. So I think that's probably not as a massive factor as people think, really. And the type of player it suits, this is always caveated with they're all the best players in the world, but I think if it's softer, it probably brings into play and gives more of an advantage to those players that do hit it a bit longer off the tee.
We're lucky now that we, as whether it's bettors or just fans of golf, we have so many stats available to us that probably weren't available 10 or so years ago. And for those of us who, unlike yourself, are very amateur when it comes in terms of sorting through strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained tee to green, and all the other bits and bobs with these resources online, what would you recommend being the specific data points that you think are necessary for a player to go well at Augusta in?
Yeah, so I think you need to play well on the par fives. So I think your par five scoring average has got to be good around there. I think one that's quite important is the birdie to bogey ratio. So I think the last 10 champions have made on average more than 8 bogeys a week. So they're going to bogey holes. It's kind of reducing that number and making birdies as well. But I think around Augusta, it's key, especially the first 2 days. It's bogey avoidance is as important as making birdies, really. So someone that doesn't make a lot of bogeys is good. I think as I've said, that 125 to 200 yard range, good proximities there, good strokes gain numbers in that area, and lag putting as well, long distance putting. So from the numbers I've put together for the players I work with, the 9th hole is the only hole on the green where lag putting is actually easier than the tour average. So long putting is really, really important. And players are going to 3-putt. I think Alathabal in 99 was the last winner that didn't have a 3-putt all week. So 3-putts are going to happen, bogeys are going to happen. It's just who keeps them to a minimum, really. And like I said, around the green, as I've said, the last 10 winners have all come into Augusta positive strokes gained or positive around the greens, meaning that they're chipping and they get up and down well. So I think that's a key factor as well. And one interesting thing I found, a couple of hole specific things. The 7th hole in particular, the leaders and the winners always play and score well around that hole in terms of they separate themselves from the field on that hole. So their scoring average for the week is considerably better than the field on the 7th. And then after that run of holes, 12, 13, 14 is the next most important group of holes in that statistic. So where the leaders and the good players separate themselves from the field, they score better on those holes. So that's important as well.
For those of us mere mortals who watch these events every year on TV, but will never have a chance to actually see Augusta and all the difficult things, the ways that the problems it presents itself to golfers and stuff like that. People always talk about the undulations and how different it is actually on course compared to what you see on TV. What are the challenges that makes Augusta such a special track for these pro players to go and play?
Yeah, I think as I said, I think both off the tee and approaching the greens, you need to know where to hit it. It's not a case with a lot of PGA Tour courses you can just hit your ball, go and find it, and you've got a shot. I think with Augusta, you need to know if you hit it this side of the fairway, the ball's going to end up on the other side of the fairway, or on like I said, for Severn, for example, you need to know that if you hit it long there, it's kind of a risk and reward hole. You're going to avoid the trees, and it's a massive advantage. And as well on the greens, especially this year now without any greens books, knowing how the putts break and where the ball moves. The pin positions there are kind of predictable, so the 4 areas on the green they're going to choose, but it's understanding the breaks. And I think Augusta's famous for sometimes the ball doesn't go towards the hole where you think it's going to. So this is where experience and why players that have played well around there do well and why rookies don't generally.
And Duncan, I know you put together a lot of preparation for the players and some of the players even towards the top of the market this week. Is there any specific changes this year as opposed to last year? Obviously we've seen the changes that quite drastic changes actually made to the 11th hole, and with the trees being moved on the right hand side and actually a few staying, which it'll be quite interesting over the weekend, and the new 10 15. Does that change any player's preparation, and what do you think is the right strategy now on the 11th hole? Has it turned into a draw off the tee now instead of a fade, or
Yeah, I think so. Starting with the 11th, I think what they've done with the 11th, they've lengthened it and, like you said, cleared out the right side. I think the biggest strategy around 11 is you're going to be hitting longer irons into there. And from what I've been told on the practice day so far, the bailout to the right is even harder to get up and down. So the drive becomes more important. So as you say, if you can draw one and get it down there a bit further, then you're going to leave yourself still a long shot. But I think the trick, the problem they're going to have is that this bailout area to the right isn't as easy as it used to be, even though it used to be really hard. So I think that's going to be even more difficult. So, I mean, for me and the strategy, talking to some of the players I work with, if you can come out of the week on 11 better than 2 over, I think you'll probably be ahead of the field, is the simple numbers there. So it's one of those holes where it's just damage limitation, I think. I don't think you should be trying to make a score there. I think it's hard as it is, and I think the extra distance and the fact that they've you'll be hitting longer irons in is difficult. And on 15, I think the strategy, I've been talking to a couple of players there, is the layup is going to be more important. I think it's going to be harder to take the green on, dependent on the drive. So it's all about a combination of where their best wedge play is played from versus historically where on 15 do people get up and down from best. And on 15, it's probably more the other par fives. It's the closest better on a layup. So if you can get it as close to the green as possible, good. But with 15, I think you need to be hitting it from about 100 yards plus. 110 yards is optimum. Anything above 85 yards will give you a full shot into the green, and the scoring difference historically isn't that much different from pitching in there. So you're not losing much by being further back, but you're certainly giving yourself a bit more of a chance to make a score there. But it'll be interesting. I think there's a few new greens as well from what I've heard. So 3, 13 and 17th have been relayed as well. So be interesting. And I've also they've extended the tee on 18, but they don't intend to use it so far. So we'll see. They may surprise us there.
Brilliant stuff. Duncan, thank you very much for taking the time to join us and give us your thoughts. Fascinating insight into the test that Augusta poses, and best of luck for the weekend.
No problem, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much to Duncan for sharing his thoughts with us there. Plenty to chew over. And now it is time to get Niall's tips and go through the market for the 2022 US Masters. And before we do, oddschecker, I mean, it's hard to find a market more perfect to explain why oddschecker is so important as this one, because not only are there massive price variations in terms of players across different bookmakers, but the place terms vary from a quarter to 5 to a fifth to the 11 places with one firm or two firms as well, and plenty of free bets and offers there as well. So do check the oddschecker grids or download the app. On the app you can get Niall's tips straight there first, not just for majors but also every weekend as well. So do download it now. And looking at the market, Jon Rahm is just about still the favourite at 12 to 1. Justin Thomas 14 to 1. Cameron Smith 18 to 1. Scottie Scheffler 18 to 1. Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy both 20 to 1. Colin Morikawa, Brooks Koepka and Victor Hovland 22 to 1. Xander Schauffele and Jordan Spieth 25 alongside Patrick Cantley, and then 40 to 1 bar. So quite a clear group of players there from 25 to 1 and shorter who make up the favourites for this year's Masters. And Niall, the way this is going to work is we're going to go through your selections, which went out on the app and on site yesterday, and then we're going to look through some of the other market principles as well and get your thoughts on them too. But the headline pick is the man who sits second in the betting. Not the first time you've tipped him up for the Masters either. Plenty of others doing so too. It is Justin Thomas.
Yeah, I probably think he should be favourite, and he could still go off favourite on the exchange. But over the next couple of days, there's been a lot of support for him over the last 24 hours or so, and it all adds up. Justin Thomas has always been considered as one of the favourites to win at Augusta, and he's never quite done it. It's slightly surprising that he doesn't have a better record. There's always been something holding him back, and as I said in the preview that I wrote, it's usually the putter that holds him back. But as we know, we talk about that week to week in previews and in any podcast we do. It's a fickle thing, the putter, and it can change week to week. His best finish here was 4th a couple of years ago in the November Masters, which was actually soft as well. The one that Dustin Johnson won, he was 4th place, but he was 8 shots behind Dustin Johnson. He was running away with it that year.
Just on that year before you move on, do you factor as much weight into that November Masters as the other ones? Do you think the form from that Masters is as applicable as previous years where it's played at the same time of year?
I don't see why not. I don't think the conditions were that different. Well, especially this week with the weather that looks to be hitting Augusta today and maybe over the next 48 hours before the tournament starts. I think it will end up being soft, and obviously it will be softer as a November Masters, and it was. And we talked about that at the time, that it would suit the likes of Dustin Johnson, a high ball flight and a long hitter. So it's good. It's certainly, I certainly wouldn't look at it as a Masters to ignore anyway. And there has been guys, Cameron Smith I think was second that year, and he's played great stuff at Augusta a few times before also. So well, Justin Thomas was fourth that year, but he never really contended. And the other years, he has made 6 cuts on the trot here, which is a decent enough record. And of course, he hits those trends that plenty we'll be looking at this week of a top 20 or a previous top 40 at least. Well, he has obviously a top 10, but the one thing missing is just he hasn't got into contention here on the back 9. I think he led after 36 holes last year, fell away over the weekend. And as I said before, it's usually the putter that's the issue there. But he's putting well this year. In fact, it's his best year on the greens for 4 years or so. So I don't think there's any negatives there. And of course, the tight lies that you get when you do miss greens around here, Justin Thomas is one of the finest exponents of getting up and down. He'll gain plenty on the field in that department too. So this year, he's just playing phenomenal golf. He doesn't have the win that some others do. In fact, there's a handful towards the top of the leaderboard or towards the top of the market that don't have a win. Jon Rahm's another. It's slightly surprising. It's been dominated by Scottie Scheffler over the last couple of months, really. But Thomas is playing great golf. On paper, to me, he's playing as almost similar golf to what Scottie Scheffler has, and a lot better than tee to green full game than Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm's having his struggles with a short game, obviously, and whether they get amplified this week at Augusta or he begins to turn things around, we'll wait and see. But there's certainly no negatives on paper for Justin Thomas, and it's no surprise there's been so much support for him over the last day or so.
My job here is to obviously ask you questions about these selections, and I'm going to make them as tricky as possible for you to justify. But with Thomas, do you worry about, there's no doubting his talent, there's no doubting the level of golfer he is, and his position in the market consistently will be right at the top end. But for a guy who's so talented, and for a guy who's won so much on tour, his major record isn't great. And you've often said, when we talk about these majors, you often say to me, you can almost tell which players are knocking on the door in majors and they're going to go on to do so. And you look back, he won the PGA Championship, the US PGA, back in 2017. Since then, he's only had 3 top 10s, once more in the PGA Championship, 1 in the Masters that you mentioned, and once in the US Open, tied 6th, 4th and tied 8th. Are you at all concerned when you're backing someone second favourite in this kind of field that he doesn't have that tendency to go out on Sundays at majors in contention?
No, I'm not concerned at all. As I wrote in a previous article that I wrote last week, about trends and things like that at Augusta, or major championships, as you just said there, good results in the previous couple of major championships seem to be very important. But Augusta will give us more of a clue what happens this week as to what's going to happen in the next couple of majors. So I wouldn't overly be looking at the last 1 or 2 last year. But Thomas, as you say, has slightly disappointed in majors since winning the PGA, but so many don't go on to win a second major. So many it's just too much of a feat. And you have to look at Dustin Johnson in those regards. It took him 5 years to get a second major, and it came at Augusta, on a slightly softish edition of it, which we could look very early on in this tournament. I think it'll probably firm up over the weekend, but certainly Justin Thomas, I'll be surprised if he doesn't go and win another major in the next couple of years. And just the way, you can't really look back and think, it's not really if you've got a major in the bag. Yeah. It's not certainly not a pure major record. They're so hard to win. There's so few of them that. But when it comes around, I think Justin Thomas definitely is capable of winning another one quite soon. And the golf that he's playing, there's just signs that it might be his time to win his second, just like Dustin Johnson was kind of hitting his peak before winning that November Masters also.
Yeah, so Justin Thomas, the headline tip there, 3.5 points win. You put him up at 14-1. That is still just about there with Sport Nation, standout 14-1, as short as 10-1 elsewhere. If you wanted to back JT each way, I think the best option you've got is Paddy Power, who are 10 places, a fifth, and they are 12-1 as it stands at the moment. On then to your second pick, it is a player in, we talk about Justin Thomas's major record. Brooks Koepka has no issues at all in terms of getting his hands on silver when it comes to majors. Although recently, his good performances in majors haven't necessarily come with him on the podium afterwards. Probably just a bit of natural variance there, but a player who you think is set to go well this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That invincibility in majors has certainly, diminished over the last couple of years. He's not quite as lethal or as potent as what he quite was when he got into contention. He's actually let a few slip through his fingers. The 2019 Masters where Tiger won, Koepka really should have won that. There was a few who really should have. Dustin Johnson had massive chances there too.
Molinari as well.
Yeah, plenty. Let that one slip through their fingers. Koepka was one of them. So then there's been another few occasions since. KO Island where he was playing with Mickelson on the final day. Poor again, just not quite the Koepka of old, but obviously he's been plagued with injury over the last number of years. There's been various issues with that, and but recently there was just signs, especially at the Valspar, where he played very well, tee to green, and I think that there was a sign when he was going through a mini slump, I suppose, early in 2021. And there was just signs like a couple of weeks before winning at Phoenix that his game was coming together. And I think it's similar this time around. The performance at the Valspar was pretty impressive. He went out in the quarters at the match play to Dustin Johnson, which I think is probably a positive. You get through the group and then you don't need to go through that absolute torture at the weekend of playing that much golf. It's hard work winning that match play. It's a long week, and it's probably a positive that you don't go all the way on that. So yeah, I think he's got a great record here too. It's just second here a couple of years ago, as I mentioned, in 2019, and seventh, and another top 20 as well. I think it's time it's just the signs. You're always looking, for me, I'm always looking week to week in any ordinary events of, especially of a golfer of his calibre who hasn't been playing great golf all season, but then when there's a sign that something's coming together, and especially before a major week, I think it's a telling sign. And then you think about the start of the week, if the course is going to play soft over the first couple of days, I think he's going to be one of those guys who can really capitalise upon that.
It's interesting, we think of him and his major tournament form as taking a dip, but since he won the US PGA in 2019, the form is second, tied fourth, tied seventh, tied 29th, missed the US Open, no Open Championship, and obviously he missed the cut last year in the Masters, but then the PGA Championship, US Open, Open Championship, he's gone second, fourth and sixth. I mean,
yeah, and there was injury concerns surrounding him when he missed the cut in the Masters there last year too. So
are we happy that he's fit going into this?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any. The performance at the Valspar was 100%, and then match play he looked spot on too. Just wanted, Dustin Johnson's finding a bit of game now too. Obviously beat him that week, but yeah, there's no injury concerns for me this week, and he should be ready to go. And I haven't really fallen into the trap of backing Brooks Koepka in after his invincibility period, and as you mentioned, so many top fives and top sixes there in these majors that he hasn't won. So you certainly wouldn't have been losing money if you had been backing him each way. But I haven't been backing him throughout that period. But I'm very tempted this week, I have to say, just because of the signs recently, playing good golf, and I think he's ready to win another one. And I think Augusta really suits him too. And yeah, I thought price wise, it's a strange market. I thought it was a very strange market this year, and especially towards the top. There's about 10 golfers, less than 22-1, and it's very hard to choose between. And so many of them look a short price. I thought and he was one who didn't look a short price, and I think he you know, out towards about 24 on the exchange too. I think it's a decent number.
Okay, that's two of Niall's tips ticked off there in Justin Thomas and Brooks Koepka, two American players, but now it's a compatriot of yours, an Irishman who you think is set to go well as your third selection.
Yeah, I think Shane Lowry's just hit a new level in the last couple of months. You know, the Honda was a big disappointment. You know, you know, 4 or 5 holes to go, he looked absolutely nailed on to win that, and it was only, you know, 2 miracles really. Like the finish from Straka, which was incredible. I think he birdied 3 of the last 4, maybe the last 4 holes, and obviously the rain coming down then on the 18th at PGA National was just such a rotten turn of luck. And obviously we've seen Larry win in the rain before, obviously in Port Rush and the Irish Open, of course, that he won as an amateur. But this time the rain went against him, and you know, it turned the par 5 basically into par 6. It was, you know, just made the hole so difficult, and so he was really unfortunate not to win there. He's followed it up with a couple of great performances too. 13th at the Players at Sawgrass and 12th at the Valspar. And that just goes to show you what kind of level he's at. They're technical golf courses, you know, that you need to keep the ball in play. And, you know, years ago you might not have thought that was one of Larry's strengths, you know, a golf course like that, because, you know, he hits the ball that far and with brute force. But his game has developed so well this season, and I think he's almost playing, you know, top 5 in the world level. Like that's how good golf I consider that he's playing. And he emerged from, like, you know, there was a kind of mini slump, so to speak, after him winning the Open Championship, and guys who have gone through that in their careers often find it very, very difficult to get out of, and long periods of, you know, poor performances, and you know, it just goes that way. But Larry has actually emerged from that pretty quickly and really, really impressively. And you know, I think he'll strip better for that. And when he comes to the Masters, he hasn't had a great record in the Masters. I think, you know, he finished the top 25 last year. He's maybe beginning to get the hang of it now. He actually says that when he played with Tiger in 2020, he learnt a lot. And I think things are just developing with Larry, and I think he could easily win a second major championship. Maybe, you know, his best chance would be another Open, obviously, but he's playing that good golf lately, you know, right up there with the likes of Justin Thomas and Scottie Scheffler. I think there's not many better players from tee to green at the moment. And of course we know his strengths are, you know, on and around the greens. Well, on the greens, you know, it can be a bit of a lottery, but certainly around the greens, you know, there's nobody better that if this course gets firm over the weekend, that when you start missing greens, you know, Larry will gain a lot more than what he does normally on the field. And from off the tee and approach, his stats are just off the charts. It's exciting to look at, and you know, getting the price of 50 to 1 or so at the start of the week was an exciting bet to have, I think.
Yeah, 50 to 1 best price at the moment, but only 5 places with those firms. A bit of 45 to 1, 6 places, 40 to 1, 8 places as well. A few firms clipped in since your preview went out yesterday. Fourth player now, someone who's maybe, you know, no shortage of major championship form, but someone who's dropped off the radar recently and has certainly bounced back after a very, very difficult season last season in Marc Leishman. Yeah,
like Leishman's one of those ones where, you know, as I mentioned in the preview, you know, he'll be very popular among, you know, mug punters all week. You know what I mean? He's obviously he does have a really good record at Augusta, and I think if he's going to win a major, this is probably the most likely one to win. But there's always signs that someone, you know, I mentioned that before. So, you know, to win a major championship, going close in a previous major championship is almost a prerequisite these days. You know, if you haven't got you know, been in contention in 1 or 2 down the years, then, you know, very few burst onto the scene. But you know, Morikawa's done it.
Yeah.
But very few other players have actually done that. And you know, obviously Leishman's gone close a couple of times. He's went close at Augusta too, but obviously he was beaten in a playoff in the Open, you know, a number of years ago at St Andrews too. But there has been signs. I think, you know, where you look at Larry's stats, you know, from tee to green, and they're just bounce off the page to you. Marc Leishman's actually don't, but I think there's reasons behind that. You know, at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, he finished 68th there, but he doesn't really like the greens. At Sawgrass, he missed the cut, but he missed the cut on a number, and he was at the wrong side of the draw. You know, there was a 3.5 shot difference or something between the two sides of that draw. Yeah. You know, Cameron Smith won it from the right side of the draw, which we'll maybe talk about later on. But and then in the match play, he ended up in the group with Justin Thomas and Kevin Kistner, which, you know, is a group of death really. So I think he could be playing better golf than what the numbers actually suggest. Plus, he has everything to contend at Augusta, and he has done before. And I think if he gets in or around the lead, he's one of the best in the world actually at being able to cope with that in any event. He's won plenty of events before, and he's won FedEx playoff event. He's won the best events, you know, going bar a major. And I think, you know, experience counts for a lot around here too. And he's in the mould of Sergio and Matsuyama, who win this, you know, at the right time in their career. He's got plenty of experience under his belt, so I think there could be a time where, you know, a guy like Leishman can win a Masters, and, you know, sitting at 80 to 1 there at the start of the week. As I say, I think that price was there because his numbers recently, you know, aren't as impressive as many others around him. But that he is, you know, an archetypal, you know, golfer who could win this, just in the mould, as I say, as Sergio and Matsuyama. So I think he's worth taking a chance on. Just
1 point each way. You put him up at 80 to 1, 70 to 1 now, best price. That's with 365, who are 8 places for Marc Leishman. A couple more, one at a similar price, and in Tony Finau, someone, you know, you mentioned who'll be popular with mug punters and Leishman. Finau, certainly, if I'm a mug punter, always popular with me. 66 to 1 he is at the time of recording, and the Finau story, it's a ridiculous one. By such consistent golf over such a prolonged period of time without a win, gets that win, finally gets over the line, and things just unravel very quickly from there. Is this a case of we're starting to see signs of him returning to the kind of form that we saw before?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just signs in the match play. He had a tough group in the match play too, but his final game, when he was already out of the event, he shot 7 under and beat Xander Schauffele 4-2. And Xander Schauffele's less than half the price of him this week, and Xander Schauffele is basically showing nothing either this year. You know, he's very hard to back anyway. But, you know, he'll be your standard 22 to 1 poke in every single major, no matter what he does. You know, he doesn't drift for some reason. I can't get my head around it. But you know, obviously Finau sitting at double price from tee to green, or well, off the tee on an approach last week at Valspar, things were, you know, absolutely fine. Around the green and on the greens is where his problem's been all season, and there were signs last week, you know, that the putter turned around. He was putting quite well, but around the green could be an issue this week, especially if it gets firm over the weekend. But Finau loves this track, you know what I mean? You know, he even played well after
rupturing his ankle.
You know what I mean? So. And he's another one who he's got a great major record, you know what I mean? And that he's went close numerous times. He's got a right handful of top 5 and 10s in majors now. So he's got that experience, and, you know, as we've talked about before, that base camping thing, you know, where you need a good performance in a major before going on to win one. He's just in that mould, and I was actually surprised at the start of the week that 66s and all was still about, because the 7 under was there in the match play. There was a sign that things had turned around, and then at the Valspar last week, it was a respectable effort for someone who's been struggling recently. So he goes to Augusta, of course, that he loves, and he pulls out his best stuff for major championships. That, you know, it's as simple as that. His major record's absolutely superb. So certainly just another one at the prices who was worth taking on. With, you know, as I said earlier, plenty looking short towards the top.
Yeah, top 10 Tony, 5 top 10s in his last 8 majors. Just goes to show the kind of golf he plays on the biggest stage, and as you say, certainly signs that things are starting to turn around for one of the most popular guys on tour. As I say, just it was the relief when he finally got that win. It was so predictable that after that the consistency would go. Your final selection at a big price is Max Homa, someone who, you know, those who criticise him would point at his major record as being far below what it should be for a golfer of his quality.
Yeah, well, I think he's only had a couple of majors, and they've been here at the Masters, or he's had more actually, but he's only played twice at the Masters, 2 missed cuts. You know, that's the big negative this week, obviously, with Homa, a very poor major record, but on paper, the golf that he's playing is bouncing off the page to me. Before the match play, which you can't really put too much emphasis off, like throughout the Phoenix, the Genesis, Arnold Palmer and Sawgrass, he wasn't outside the top 20, which is it's an incredible run of form, especially for someone who's been renowned for playing well on the West Coast. So he started going to the East Coast, and you know, top 20s at the Arnold Palmer Sawgrass, you know, really impressed me. And from tee to green, he's as good as many. There's not that many better than him this season. So impressive numbers. Has the win this season also as well. So he won at the back end of last year, the Fortinet, and obviously that's one of those trends that we always look that often pops up, that someone has got a win earlier on the season. I mentioned it in an article that I wrote that Rory McIlroy is another who has the win earlier on. There's plenty at the top of the market don't. But Max Homa does, and he also has the added bonus of the Riviera form, where he won Riviera a couple of years ago, which actually beat Tony Finau, which is another bonus for Finau backers too, in a playoff that week. So yeah, he's big bonus winning Riviera, because that form translates so well to Augusta. And yeah, playing well all season. It was just one of those ones that I thought was definitely worth a chance at triple figures.
Yeah, so those are Niall's selections for the Masters this year. We've gone through them all, but before we let Niall go, we're going to go through the market principles. So some of those at the top end, some of the household names will surely be popular, with plenty watching this and betting on the weekend's golf. And we'll start with a favourite in Jon Rahm, who is currently 12-1, just ahead of JT. But as you said, a chance, given the way the market is moving, that Thomas could go off favourite come Thursday afternoon. Probably draw dependent as well, depending on the weather too. But Jon Rahm, another one who he's basically always favourite these days for majors at the moment, yet to win one. And is he someone you were pretty easy to cross off your list ahead of this?
Not quite as easily as you might think. I reckon for the last 3 or 4 months, I was thinking he would probably be the one that would be backing when it came around to it towards the top of the market. But he's just struggling so much on and around the greens that it's hard to see it turn around so much. As Duncan mentioned, around the green so important, and the previous winners have all been performing quite well in that department coming in. So it's difficult to find it. The one thing is that his long game is in superb nick, and it's one of the reasons why I backed him at Sawgrass, and was quite disappointed with his performance. But from tee to green, off the tee and on approach, he is playing so well, as good as basically anybody else. So that's the risk of when you're leaving him out. The long game is in such good condition that if he just holds a few putts early doors and gets into contention early on a Thursday, he's got a great chance of winning it. But it's just the risk in turning that around. And if we see a firm golf course over the weekend, then the short game just might really struggle. And at the price, if he had drifted to maybe 12s or 14s, you might have took the chance, but around the 10 or 11-1 mark, it just doesn't really appeal.
A bit of a surprise, I would say. I mean, for those people who do look at golf markets once a year and see Cameron Smith sitting alongside Scottie Scheffler as kind of joint third favourites, both 18-1, market price 12-14-1. I mean, in my view, certainly in the case of Smith, it looks far too short. And Ben Coley, who of course has been on this podcast with us a couple of times from Sporting Life, wrote in his preview that he reckons Cameron Smith is about 10 points too short. Where would you see that, and where would you have them in your kind of tissue market? Yeah,
I totally agree with Ben. We were messaging earlier on in the week, and he gave me a real good nugget actually, that he's never won a tournament without being the best putter in the field, which is incredible, really. So, if you're thinking he could win this week, does he need to be the best putter in the field? That's a big thing to overcome. Yeah, absolutely. So but that is his strength, mind you. On and around the greens, he's an absolute wizard. Yeah. And he obviously won at Hawaii and he won at Sawgrass, but it's worth noting that he won at Sawgrass from the right side of the draw. And arguably Keegan Bradley's performance was a fair bit better than him that week, and it was a very unlucky loser. But yeah, the price is far too short. I can't see many people getting involved with that this week. You know, we backed him. I put him up here in the November edition Masters at triple figures, and you know he's obviously got form around Augusta now, but taking the 14 or 16 to 1, just I can't see an interest in many. I think he's probably the worst price of anyone towards the top of that field. And as you say, what Ben said, 10 points bigger, you know, around 25 is looks the mark to me. And it's probably still wouldn't even tempt me to back him.
And how about Scottie Scheffler, world number 1?
Yeah, well, his price is right. You know, I think that's around his mark.
I mean, he's one of those where if you back him for every major at about 16 to 1 over the next 10 or so, you're probably going to hit, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, he's playing that well lately that he just has to have a huge chance. But the expectation on him is massive this week, and he arrives at world number 1 in the world. He's got a very high profile this week. Everyone will be wanting a piece of him, and you know he's got a couple of top 10s and majors already in a short major career so far, so that's impressive. But whether he can it's a tall order to come here after winning 3 times in the last couple of months and big tournaments at that as well. You know, if he goes and wins the Masters after doing that, you know that's tiger stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's really so. Just realistically speaking, you just can't see him winning it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm happy to gloss over him too, to be fair.
Dustin Johnson, winner of the November Masters, comes here. He's 20 to 1 alongside Rory McIlroy, a player who you've stuck up for a fair bit in recent weeks. Yeah,
well, Dustin's found a bit of form recently. You know, there was definitely signs at the match play that things are coming together for him. So I definitely wouldn't rule him out. And you know, if it's soft over the first couple of days, you know, that'll give him an even better chance. Just he hasn't quite hit the heights after winning that Masters since, and whether he can, you know, winning another Masters here in April will almost need another, you know, career performance. You know what I mean? Which just seems a bit unlikely for Dustin Johnson for me at the minute, and probably seems a bit unlikely for Rory McIlroy too. Even though I think the price of around 20 to 1 is a lot more tempting than the likes of Cameron Smith and Scottie Scheffler.
And he likes it soft, as we know.
Yeah, and you know he's played well here numerous times before, and he can turn it on like that. So he certainly isn't one I could rule out. And as I wrote in an article there a couple of weeks ago, he does hit a lot of those trends, and he's won earlier on this season. And he hasn't missed a cut, which is another trend that a lot of golfers hit who win the Masters, that they haven't missed a cut that year. McIlroy's playing reasonably well, so I certainly wouldn't put anyone off going in at 20 to 1, but there's just a right few more likely winners around. I think his price is about right as opposed to Smith, but yeah, it's hard to see him putting in that effort to win the Masters just at the minute too.
Well, it
would be painful. It would be painful, even though as an Irishman,
surely we can just cheer him on, can't we?
Yeah, I guess we can, but I'll be thinking about.
It'd be more painful to see him getting contention on the Sunday, and then you know have a Rory Sunday. You put up Brooks Koepka, we spoke about, who's 22 to 1. A couple of players either side of him. 2 of the most exciting young golfers in world golf. Colin Morikawa 22 to 1, double major winner. Victor Hovland 22 to 1, a future major winner. Yeah, absolutely. And is the price of Morikawa maybe a bit disrespectful? Who knows? It could turn out to be. You know, how many times did we kick ourselves with Brooks Koepka, you know, drifting towards that kind of mark, and us not backing him and winning a couple of majors. Morikawa could be in the same mould, you know, because he's already got 2 under his belt. He won the last major, of course, at St George's. So yeah, he has every chance, and he has the game around Augusta too. That precision iron play should certainly catapult him into contention a few times here during his career. Maybe just not lighten it up as much as other golfers around him around the same price bracket. That, you know, you could leave him off the list. He wasn't before St George's, was he either? Really?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but he's one. You know, a lot depends on the putter too. You know, he's not as consistent with a putter as the other top golfers in the world. But when he does have a good week, then you know you're in real danger. Victor Hovland has been one of the form golfers of the year, of course, and I don't see many negatives. I think he'll probably win a major soon too, but I prefer almost to back him first round leader here. I think, you know, the short game will probably come to bite him at some stage this week, and especially if the course gets firm over the weekend. And there is more chance of it being soft at the start, maybe on Thursday. So I definitely think, as opposed to backing Victor Hovland outright, he's certainly worth a look in the first round leader market. And then, you know, given a certain lack of experience in major contention, plus the frailties around the greens when the going gets tough at the weekend, it might just find him out a little. I mean, he'll maybe, you know, strip fitter for that in majors to come. But nevertheless, he definitely does tempt me as a first round leader bet.
It's worth remembering that last year, in 2022, which was his second appearance, he made a 7 on the first and ended up shooting a 73 with three birdies following up as well. So certainly someone, you don't want him to make a 7 on the first, but someone who's made birdies at difficult times at Augusta in the past. We can't do a Masters preview, Niall, especially with yourself, and not talk about Jordan Spieth, who is 25 to 1 alongside Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantley. But let's focus on Spieth, because
this would be painful.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy we've spoken about a lot, especially in this competition. He is, he bounced back to some form ahead of the Masters last year. We were both on, and we were both quite excited about his chances. He just came up short behind Hideki Matsuyama. Doesn't come into this event in the same kind of nick, but is basically double the price here. Can you see a case? Are you going to let him go unbacked at 25 to 1?
Yeah, there were certainly signs last week that he was getting it together from tee to green. Not good with the putter again, and that's the issue. When we backed him last year, he was absolutely unbelievable from tee to green again, and one of the worst putters in the field. Might you get the same performance this year? It's certainly a chance, but I don't think he's coming in with the form, tee to green, that he did last year. But then again, as you say, you do get the bigger price. And it's very hard not to have a few quid at least on the machine to get your stakes back for the week if it doesn't go to plan. But watching Jordan Spieth win without being on him the Masters would be mega painful, especially for me. But
you'll be on. I've got no doubt that if I text you on Sunday afternoon and Jordan's too clear, I say, "Did you have any?" You'll reply saying, "Yes, I did." whether that is at 30 to 1 on Thursday morning or at 2 to 1 on the morning of Sunday morning, I think we'll see. He's not going to win unbacked. I'm pretty sure of it. Patrick Cantley, the last one of this group, who are 25 to 1 or shorter, a golfer I'm pretty sure you've told me in the past you'd written him off as being one you weren't going to back, but then I read in your staking plan that you did toy with the idea of putting him up here.
Yeah, definitely considered him, and it was only because, as we've talked about, plenty towards the top of the market just look a bit short.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I would have thought we would get bigger than that on the week when the bookies get competitive. It's really 20 to 1 or 18 to 1 you're looking at there, and it just doesn't quite cut the mustard. And that's really the reason why I went with Koepka over Cantley. But I think he really has the tools for Augusta, and he's playing great stuff this year. And he strikes me as someone at the minute who's maybe the third or fourth best golfer in the world. But I'm not quite seeing the wins for it lately. But he was absolutely stupendous towards the end of last season. Obviously won the Memorial that Rahm had to pull out of. There was numerous other great performances too, and I think that's going to stand him in good stead the next couple of years in the majors, that when he gets into contention, he'll be able to do the job. But so far, it's been a pretty dismal major record. He went close here in 2019, but bar that, it hasn't been overly impressive. And that's probably just enough of a reason not to get involved at that price.
This is the time where you tell me my selection is you used to always tell me it was a bad one, but I think recent years we've done a bit better. But I've backed Will Zalatoris, second here last year on debut, putting in the kind of performance that really made him arrive on people's radar, I guess. One of the best in the world, tee to green, one of the worst in the world when it comes to putting. And there'll be a few nervy moments for those of us who backed him over the weekend when standing over those 5-footers. Can you see why? I mean, you're going to tell me I've dropped a clanger here, or can you see?
No, absolutely. He was in my final list of about 7 or 8 golfers that I was thinking of backing for this, and winners of this major down the years have all struggled. There's been numerous golfers who have struggled with their short game. Yeah. Matsuyama obviously being one, Garcia another. Bubba Watson was never renowned for his short game, so Will Zalatoris is in that bracket where he's got real frailties with a putter, but plenty have won this. And you only need a good week, and you know, as Ben Coley pointed out in his preview this week, he doesn't miss that many of them. It might look really unpretty, you know what I mean? It looks nasty, but you know, he doesn't miss an awful lot of them, and he didn't miss an awful lot in the match play too, when you think about it. And you know, there were a lot of important putts, you know, inside 10 feet to keep matches going there. So yeah, he was one of those ones, certainly at a decent price, around the 35 and 33 to 1 mark, which is very tempting, and hits a lot of the trends too of having, you know, obviously finished second at debut. That's what Spieth done, and then he went and won it the following year. So he could follow in the same footsteps, and he's certainly talented enough to do it.
Just struck me, it just seemed bizarre for his price to be so much bigger than some of the guys who's kind of developing a similar age and at similar points in their golfing career as well, when there's no suggestion that Will Zalatoris is any less talented than some of those at the top end. Final one before we move on, and you see my horrific putting stroke on the golf course, where I do miss a lot of putts. Bryson DeChambeau, because you know Bryson is of course one of the box office names in golf. He's currently 50 to 1 to win this one, a player who his relationship with Augusta thus far hasn't been a particularly happy one. There are serious fitness issues here. Is there any chance of making a case for Bryson, or is this a case of those casual golf fans of just warning them off, don't get too excited by the big price?
I was getting really excited about like 10 to 1 or something a couple of years ago, wasn't it? It was a bit embarrassing now looking back. But you know, towards 40 or 50 to 1, it certainly catches the eye, but he's so lightly raced this year. You know, he hasn't played much golf at all, that it's hard to see him coming in and, you know, land at a Masters. But then again, he's played that poorly here the last couple of years that, you know, maybe this is the preparation he needs, who knows. But I do think actually his game is suited to Augusta, no matter what anyone tells me. Obviously, he's going to, you know, bash the driver and try and get as far down as many holes as possible. And he finds the trouble in some trees, which, you know, obviously you could stray the ball at Augusta, but when he gets with his driver involved, he has actually ended up in a few hard spots over the last couple of years. But certainly around the 40 to 50 to 1 mark, it catches the eye a little. Like, it just depends on what kind of... He's certainly one who could surprise everybody and turn up an actually decent nick when you least expect it. You know, if there's anybody that can do that, it might be him. So,
you also went off a massive price in the US Open that you won as well, do you remember? They drifted miles out to kind of 34, 36.
Yes, absolutely.
And there weren't any fitness issues then. I won't be backing Bryson. But last one, always have a look at the specials markets here as well, because of course, if you look on the oddschecker site, it's not just the winner market, it's not just the first round leader market as well, where I should have said Victor Hovland is a 28 to 1 shot with most firms after Niall saying that could be the way to play Victor. But we've also got the top region markets and other bits as well, with the different categories too. Anything you'd like to put up here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple worth taking on. Matsuyama being one in the top Asian. I was quite keen on Matsuyama's chances before last week, simply because of the price that was available. You know, he was heading towards the 50 mark in the exchange, and I thought it was maybe slightly insulting given, you know, his form around here and his form all year, in fact. But obviously he pulled out last week with an injury, and you know, the previous winner tends to struggle an awful lot. You know, Dustin Johnson missed the cut last year after winning it, and that's indicative of plenty of Masters champions down the year. So I think he actually might struggle now, especially with the injury concerns. And I would like to take him on with Siwoo Kim, who has, you know, a pretty decent record around Augusta, a couple of top 25s, I think, and played really well in Texas last week. So I definitely think Matsuyama is worth taking on there in the top Asian. And
16 to 5 best price Siwoo, and that's with Unibet.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned, obviously, I really do think that Cameron Smith's far too short in the top Aussie market, so it's just who you want to take him on with. And obviously I've backed Leishman, so I think Leishman is probably the one to take him on with, around 4 to 1. Adam Scott playing some good golf this year too. You know, it'll probably be a toss-up between those two. Can't really see Lucas Herbert making many gains around here. Norman Woon Lee or Cameron Davis, you know, hasn't been too impressive lately. Like, so I quite like Marc Leishman. I think he'll go well in that market, and definitely just for price-wise, I simply think they should be closer together. I don't think, you know, you've got Cameron Smith around 11 to 10 mark there. I think he should probably be, you know, closer to 2 to 1, 9 to 4.
Would you back Leishman each way here? Because it's you got a 6-runner race, further two?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. I think it'll probably be a race between the top three. And it actually wouldn't surprise me at all to see Cameron Smith struggle this week. Never mind, I think it's a bad price, but I wouldn't be surprised if he actually struggles.
There you go. Brennan Cameron Smith back is out there turning off the video now as we go. Do download to the oddschecker YouTube channel where you can find plenty more preview content across all sports, not just golf. Weekly racing shows as well, the oddschecker betting show, racing weekly there too. And you can find this on any podcast platform as well. Do download the oddschecker app where you can find the very best prices, bookie offers, free bets and place terms, crucial for your Masters betting as well. And Niall's tips, Andy Holding's tips as well, straight to the app as well. Thank you very much for Niall for joining us and to Duncan Carey. Check them both out on social media as well. Fingers crossed for an unbelievable weekend at Augusta and what is an incredible week of sport as well. But as ever, please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.